The Carolina Panthers are going to look like a completely different team in almost every way in 2023. The Panthers no longer have Christian McCaffrey. Frank Reich is the new head coach after firing Matt Rule, and DJ Moore is gone because he was shipped off in a deal to acquire the first overall pick at the draft. So there will be a new quarterback in Carolina, and I'm not talking about Andy Dalton. And who knows, maybe the Panthers can finally figure out the position for the first time since peak Cam Newton, because things really just haven't been pretty in Carolina recently. But first, thank you to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. I personally love listening to podcasts and pretty much do all day, whether they're about NFL free agency or March Madness. For whatever reason, that's just my way of learning. I love listening to learn, and there's no better way to do that than with Raycons. Raycon is premium audio at the perfect price, so you can build habits like me, like going to the gym regularly without even having to break the bank. Luckily, they're also durable. They're both sweat and water resistant. They are able to withstand your occasional left in the washing machine experience, which does happen to me here and there. They can be good if left out in the rain or even if you drop them in a puddle. Personally, my favorite feature of the Raycons is awareness mode, which just allows me to be able to listen to my podcasts, but also hear what's going on around me. All I have to do is hold down the button on the right earbud down 3 seconds, and it can switch between awareness mode and noise isolation, which just kind of blocks out everything else around me. Plus, whether you're looking for a pair of everyday earbuds, some low latency gaming headphones, or a nice speaker that has a battery to last all night long at your next party, Raycon has you covered. Are you ready to buy something small with a big impact? Dude, that is so what she said. Click the link in the description below or go to buyraycon.com/JD Productions to get 15% off your next order. Again, click that link in the description box down below or go to buyraycon.com/JD Productions to get 15% off your next order. And thank you again to Raycon for sponsoring today's video. It's safe to say that last season didn't go to plan for the Panthers. Matt Rule came into the season on the hot seat in what was his third year, and he only lasted 5 weeks and was fired after a 1-4 start. Then, 11 days later, Carolina began to sell and traded away star running back Christian McCaffrey. He was sent to the 49ers for a second, third, fourth, and fifth, which is, to be fair, pretty solid compensation for a back. Steve Wilks ended up taking over as the interim head coach, and things were still rocky for a bit. Carolina was 2-7 after week 9, but then the Panthers started to turn it around. The Panthers did finish 5-3 to close out the season, and that did end up giving Steve Wilks a pretty solid case for the job long term, but ultimately Carolina decided to go in a different direction and hired Frank Reich. I know Reich didn't necessarily have a ton of success as the Colts head coach, but I think the biggest issue in Indianapolis was the lack of a quarterback. The Colts had a carousel of quarterbacks, and once he was fired and hired by Carolina, my biggest concern was that he was still going to be stuck in the same situation. The Panthers essentially had a 3-way split at starter in 2022. Carolina traded for Baker Mayfield. They had Sam Darnold start games for the second straight season, and PJ Walker saw some play time too in what was his third year with the team. The Panthers couldn't figure out quarterback the same way Frank Reich didn't in Indy, but the Panthers have already made a major push to now find a true starting quarterback. Carolina made a huge splash trading for the first overall pick at the 2023 NFL Draft from the Bears in exchange for 2 first-round picks, one of which is 9th overall this year, 2 second-round picks, and wide receiver DJ Moore. Now, trading away Moore, Carolina's number 1 wideout was certainly a pretty penny, and I'm sure they did not want to do that, but Chicago reportedly really wanted Moore to finally be able to give Justin Fields a true number 1, and that's what Carolina had to give up in order to get the first pick. Now, the big question is who the Panthers want to take at 1. Clearly, it's going to be a quarterback, just like there is almost every year. A handful of different quarterbacks have all been discussed as the potential top top quarterback, Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, and Anthony Richardson. It sounds like there are plenty of concerns with Levis that make him a risky first overall pick, and Richardson is pretty raw too. I mean, I wouldn't be absolutely shocked if the pure talent of Richardson makes the Panthers fall in love, but I think the other two are probably better options. That likely does leave a decision between Young and Stroud. Young has been considered the number one for most of the draft process, but his height and weight does have some teams worried enough to the point that it sounds like the Panthers prefer Stroud. They have been constantly linked to Stroud, and barring some switch or trade, it sounds like Stroud may be the future in Carolina. Unfortunately, it doesn't sound like CJ Stroud is going to inherit a true number one. The Panthers had some okay options last season past DJ Moore, but not great. Laviska Shenault, I think, is solid, and Terrace Marshall did actually have a pretty good end to the season after Matt Rule was fired. For whatever reason, he just refused to use him. Carolina did clearly know that they needed some more receiver help, and they quickly went out and signed Adam Thielen to a 3-year, $25 million deal. Thielen has had a few down seasons for his own regard, but he did have an incredible run from 2016 to 2018 with 3,600 yards and 18 touchdowns. Another pretty big Panthers signing was Miles Sanders, who inked a 4-year, $25.4 million deal. He's coming off of, by far, the best year of his career with 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns. He'll join a running back room that features Chuba Hubbard and Raheem Blackshear. Go Hokies. The Panthers did also make a signing for tight end, inking Hayden Hurst to a 3-year, $21.75 million deal. He's going to join Ian Thomas and Tommy Tremble, but Hurst is a very clear upgrade there. Carolina's offensive line was pretty much middle of the pack, but there are some really good tackles on that team, and Akeem Ekwonu on the left and Taylor Moton on the right. Austin Corbett is a very solid guard, but he did tear his ACL last season, and that probably played a role in why Carolina signed Justin McCray, pretty much just in case Corbett doesn't rehab well. The Panthers did also re-sign center Bradley Bozeman to a 3-year, $18 million deal. The only other somewhat big offensive signing was backup quarterback Andy Dalton. Carolina is gonna take a young quarterback, but Dalton can start week 1 if needed, and he'll likely be a solid vet to help on a 2-year, $10 million deal. The Panthers defense is going to look pretty different next season too. Carolina's new defensive coordinator is Ejiro Evero, who was the Broncos defensive coordinator last season, and that defense was pretty good, just everything else was the problem. The defense will probably switch from a 4-3 to a 3-4, and the Panthers already have some good pieces. Brian Burns is a stud defensive end. Carolina declined 2 firsts for him at the trade deadline a season ago, and he'll probably get a big contract here soon. The Panthers need to find a good player to go opposite of him now. The Panthers did make some moves to bolster up that defensive line though. Carolina still has 2020 first rounder Derek Brown, who did improve after 2 pretty lackluster seasons to begin his career. He's probably going to be on the other side of Deshaun Williams, who the Panthers ended up signing in free agency. He was on Denver last year, so he was already under Ejiro Evero. Then that nose tackle spot is probably going to be Shai Tuttle, who signed a 3-year, $19.5 million deal after he was in New Orleans for 4 years. At linebacker, it sounded like Shaq Thompson may have been released, but he ended up reworking his deal to stay in Carolina. Frankie Louvu really broke out last season at linebacker, so the Panthers should feel really good there. Carolina does have a lot of talent in the secondary, especially at cornerback, but the group just hasn't actually been able to stay healthy. JC Horn has been good, but he's had issues staying on the field, and Dante Jackson also finished the season on injured reserve with Horn. That finally leaves safety, where Jeremy Chin will probably be closer to the line in that new 3-4, which should be really good for him. And Carolina also made a big signing by getting Von Bell, who had a lot of success in Cincinnati. The Panthers have a long way to go, but the good news is that the NFC South is so bad that Carolina could absolutely win their division. Regardless, the next few seasons are going to be about developing and trying to build something. Whoever ends up being the first overall pick is going to be the most important thing. The Panthers need a franchise quarterback, and hopefully Carolina can build around him, and Frank Reich is the right person in charge. It may take some time, but there is a lot of reasons to be optimistic in Carolina.